Aloha, Jonathan here from Behold Retreats, and today we're going to talk about choosing an ayahuasca retreat. Now, this video is for you if, number one, you're ready for a life-changing ayahuasca retreat. Second, you want to get the most out of the experience. And third, if you'd like to avoid the mistakes that I made for quite a number of years so that you can make more progress in less retreats. Now, I'd like to point out that it's probably not actually an ayahuasca retreat that you're looking for. What you're probably looking for is to heal and let go of the past. You're probably trying to let go of any limiting beliefs that you may be hanging on to, trying to perhaps get unstuck and find some clarity of purpose in your life. Maybe deepen your spirituality and self-understanding, self-knowledge, and ultimately to improve the quality of the human experience so that you can live each day with more peace, more love, more joy. That's ultimately what this work is all about. Now, I've kind of split this up into three parts in order to share with you kind of what the things that I wish I knew 5 years ago when I was starting my own journey. The first is that this work is fundamentally all about elevating consciousness, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Second, you really must do mental and emotional work alongside the plant medicine work to get and keep the benefits from this work. And third and finally, I'll share with you a few tips to help you choose a great retreat that's going to hopefully change your life. And also perhaps recommend some next steps in terms of the things that you may consider for next steps from here. Now, first and foremost, talk a little bit about elevating consciousness, which is really about a process of surrender, expanding your reality, and kind of growing in your empowerment. Now, the way that I like to think about consciousness is in these kind of four blocks of states. At the bottom, we have what you might describe as the more contracted states of consciousness. Above that, the more egoic states of consciousness. Above that still, more positive states of consciousness. And then finally, above that, the more mystical states of consciousness. Now, when we're in the kind of more contracted states of consciousness, we tend to believe that life is happening to us. So we feel a bit like a victim. And as a result of that, we might experience a lot of inaction in our lives. Now, often we will be more identified with lower level emotions like shame and guilt and fear, grief, apathy. All of those sorts of lower level emotions are often impacting us on a daily basis in these more contracted states of consciousness. Now, above that is what I would describe as the egoic states of consciousness, right? Which is when we think that life is happening for us, that the universe revolves around us. And so that's typically described by states of pride, anger, or envy, where ultimately you are on the hedonic treadmill, right? You think it's all about you. You can't get enough. You can't have enough. The mind is always racing. These states of consciousness are typified by hyperactivity. So if you're someone who identifies themselves as very busy, then it's very likely that you are in this state of consciousness on the whole. Not to say that you can't move up or move down at certain points of time within your life, but busy people are within this band, and that tends to be most successful people within the modern paradigm. Now, above that is what I would describe as more positive states of consciousness, where there's a greater interdependency. The emotions are more around courage, around acceptance, around willingness. We understand that life is happening through us, and that there's a interdependency and more collaborative states of being, where our life is more surrounded by happiness, by productivity, by balance across the various aspects of our lives. And we know that we depend upon people, and others depend upon us, and we can be more of service to one another in these states of consciousness, because we're not so self-oriented. And then finally, above that, which is states of consciousness that we'd love to achieve when exploring topics such as plant medicine, which is the mystical states of consciousness. So that's when we transcend rationality and can experience universal love, peace, joy, in ways that perhaps we haven't experienced them in the more rational states of consciousness, if that makes sense. And our understanding of things in these states of consciousness is that life is happening as us, and that we can experience the synchronistic and the extraordinary. And when you hear about people who are successfully manifesting, typically they're living from these states of consciousness. Now, it's worth recognizing that it's not that as we experience these states of consciousness that they're permanent or that we don't move up and down. And it's also worth recognizing that in the clinical trials, the science that's coming out in terms of research from Johns Hopkins, Harvard, NYU, etc., that the strongest determinant of lasting benefits from this work is when we reach these mystical states of consciousness. So those are the deeper breakthroughs that we're looking for, that are out of mind, out of body experiences that really transform our own understanding of ourselves. Now, there's this beautiful quote that I think is a good example of what's possible for each of us in exploring this work from Eckhart Tolle, who is the author of Power of Now. And the quote is, "Ultimately, you're not a person, but a focal point where the universe becomes conscious of itself." What an amazing miracle. And I think that reflects, the reaching these more mystical states of experience where, the understanding of the small, separate, egoic self is transcended and let go of for something which is much greater than what we typically experience on a day-by-day basis. Now, the second point that I'd like to emphasize is in relation to the requirement to do mental and emotional work. And this is one of the mistakes that I was making for many years along my own journey. Now, what some of the science and research shows us this is from a published paper over almost 2,300 ayahuasca ceremonies, and I've included the link to the research here. Now, what the research shows is that, number one, plant medicine such as ayahuasca can increase our joy for life, so help us connect to the things that bring us energy, which is amazing and beautiful. So get some clarity, some guidance, all of that sort of thing. Second, it can deepen our spirituality and level of self-understanding. Again, amazing, beautiful. And third, and I think most importantly, and this is something that I was overlooking for years and so many people are overlooking, it does not remove our feelings of toxicity and negativity. So this is why you may have heard from friends, etc. They go on a retreat, they have a quote-unquote life-changing experience, and then 3 weeks later, everything looks pretty much back to normal for them. So that's very typical, and this is indeed what was happening to me for years. And the reason for that is that we have this expansive experience, we get some vision, some guidance, some clarity, but ultimately we're anchored back down because we haven't been able to rewire any of the patterns of mind or let go of any of these kind of deeply held emotions while we're on retreat. Now, the way that I look at this work now is that, it's the mental and emotional work, it's the 3D work, it's the preparation work, the integration work that ultimately is the self-determination in our evolution. It's not that plant medicine or psychedelics are inherently positive. It's how we use them that makes such a difference. And so the way that I see this work now is that it's 80% mental and emotional work, which is what sets up the 20%, plant medicine retreat to be as transformative as it can be. So when we turn up with the right tools, the right intentions, the right understanding of ourselves, that's what makes the difference and allows us to make massive progress in a short space of time on a retreat. Now, part of this is that, fundamentally, we can't see our own mental and emotional blind spots. There's some people out there who've been doing medicine work for decades and still, unfortunately, are kind of full of negativity, judgment, and this is kind of the basis for what you might have heard of as spiritual bypass, which is pretty common in relation to this work. So in essence, we really need some outside guidance, right? Some coaching or some therapy to help us rewire these decades-old patterns of thinking, of beliefs, of behavior, so that we become, super clear on the things that we are trying to get out of the work with the plant medicine and deepen our own self-understanding through that process, so that we can ultimately release those things that we're ready to let go of, right? So whether it's the thinking, whether it's the behavior, whether it's the emotions, the shame, the guilt, the fear, the grief, all the stuff that we've picked up from maybe earlier life traumas or challenging experiences and bullying and all of those sorts of things. So in essence, the point that I'd anchor more than anything in relation to this work is, if you want to sustainably benefit from plant medicine, you must do the mental and emotional work. And I'm someone who's pretty independent, likes to kind of work things out for themselves. And years of, reading the right spiritual books, meditating a lot, doing plant medicine work. And it wasn't until I actually started getting some outside guidance, coaching, therapy for the mental and emotional work that's led to much deeper breakthroughs, much more sustained benefits from this work. And that's really how we anchor and sustain the benefits back into the three-dimensional transformational world, right? So whether we're looking for better health, more love in our world, a deeper sense of purpose, and being able to connect to the abundance, which is of course tied to purpose, and the gifts that we want to bring into the world, it's all a reflection of consciousness. And so what we're trying to do from this work, as I shared in the last section, is we're trying to sustainably elevate our consciousness so that we can invite in the health, the love, the purpose, and the abundance. Now, a few tips in terms of finding a great plant medicine retreat. First and foremost, think of your safety. Make sure you're going through a very high quality safety screening in terms of medical, in terms of psychological, and that you really trust the organization that you're working with. Second to that, make sure that you really take the time and the energy to develop your own why. A lot of people hear about the benefits of this work and perhaps have had some friends that have had some positive experiences, and so they're going to experience it themselves. Take the time and the energy to really understand why you're doing this for yourself, because this is intense and powerful work. Make sure that you take the time and the energy to educate yourself so that you can make a good choice in relation to who you're going to work with. I genuinely believe that who you choose to work with is one of the most important decisions you're going to make in your life. You can have, powerful experiences, or you can have transformational experiences. The difference between psychedelics and transformation. And the quality out there, unfortunately, is massively variable. One of the ways that I point this out to people is that if you go to a retreat aggregator website, it's very likely that you will see that they are all 5-star reviews across all of the retreats. Now, that tells us two things. The first good thing it tells us is that people are having powerful and profound and positive experience. The second thing it tells us is that people are not really able to discern quality, right? So if we went to Airbnb or whatever other website and we saw that everything was 5 stars, we would probably suspect that something is not quite right. And the truth is this ecosystem is still emerging, and so there's plenty of room for improvement in terms of quality of understanding in relation to what a good experience looks like. And so hopefully through this video and some of the other content that we have around on this website, you'll be able to educate yourself, ask the right questions, and find a great experience. Now, in relation to that, most of the leading practitioners, the high quality practitioners that ideally you're probably looking for, prefer to work in legal locations, right? So they don't want to be looking over their shoulder, wondering whether this ceremony or that ceremony is going to put them in some hot water. And so fundamentally, that's why most people travel for these experiences. Now, my recommendation would also be best to work within a small group, right? There's a lot of places out there that are doing group sizes 15, 20, 25. I've even heard there's some places that are even doing 50 or 100 people together. Now, this is very intense work energetically. And so, if you're someone who is focused on their own experience, then I would really highly recommend that you do this within a smaller group, or even consider a private experience, which is, I don't hesitate to recommend, because it's how I've made a large majority of my progress over the years. Now, the last thing I'd share is, do not underestimate this work. It's sometimes I hear of friends that or past clients that have gone and done a 2 or 3 day retreat, and I think that really doesn't do justice to the sacredness of the person or the depth of this work. So it's really best to be able to take a week for yourself and to go to a location which is dedicated to this beautiful work, and to take some time afterwards, right? So take a few days afterwards to anchor the new you in a location that doesn't have old you expectations, right? So if you go straight back to work and back into the environment with family, with friends, with all the pressures of everyday life, then it's very easy to quite quickly, over the space of a couple days, even revert, boom, exactly back to who you were before. And then, the potential transformation, the opportunity has been missed. And there's many people who have attended a bunch of retreats, but haven't really been able to make the shift because they've put themselves too quickly back into the demands of everyday life. Now, a few potential next steps for you. If you're ready for a great retreat, check out some of our upcoming dates. Please note that the attendance for our events is by invitation only, and that's just to make sure that you're a fit for us and that we're a fit for you. So if what I've shared resonates with you, then you can request a complimentary discovery call on the button below. So click through and you'll speak to either me or one of our team. Second, you can learn more about another medicine, which is 5-MeO DMT. Now, this is a very powerful medicine, but it's easier physically. So, if you're dreading the bucket, as it were, with ayahuasca, which can be very physically demanding in terms of its detoxification effect, very healing, but also very demanding, then you might check out 5-MeO DMT as well. Number 3, if you'd like to learn more about consciousness or how to get more of the benefits from working with plant medicine, then check out our webinar or some of the other content that's linked below or around our website in our blog. And then finally, if you are set on a retreat nearby, near home for you, then please take your time to do your own due diligence, ask the right questions. Our recommendation would be really to travel so that you can be confident that you're working with people who are doing this work at a high level in a legal and safe context. And that's, regardless of whether you're working with us or working with someone else, that would be very much my recommendation for you. So wishing you safe and elevating journeys, and giving you much love and aloha. Let me know if you've got any questions, and we're always here to help. So wishing you a beautiful day. Aloha.